In this video, we're gonna create this advanced container layout in Elementor. And what's so cool about this layout is that this green bar on the side, it grows with you. So when you make the window smaller or bigger, it just grows. Well, the contents, this text, stays within the 12-column grid, which is what you want for most websites. I haven't seen a tutorial like this yet on YouTube because it's not super easy to do, especially if you want to keep it responsive and on the grid. So I thought, let's just make this video, and you guys also seem to like more advanced container layouts, looking at the views of my previous advanced container layout. So I hope that you guys will like this one too. This also means that this video is not super beginner friendly. So if you are still an Elementor beginner and you haven't worked that much with the container, then I highly recommend to watch this video that I made a while ago. It's still relevant and gives you all the basics about the container. I will also put a link in the description that allows you to download this whole page as an Elementor template, which you can then upload to your own website with the template upload feature to see if my version is the same as yours. Again, all of the links are in the description. And now let's just get started. We're gonna start on this page. I already did the basics. I made a little header with a logo and a menu, and I also created the bottom container, which just contains a divider, which is just this little line, a heading, and then 3 icon boxes with a little bit of spacing. So now we're gonna start with the middle section, but let's analyze it first a little bit, because what do we need to make this work? The first thing is our main box, and then we need another box for the image, and we need another box over here. But we also need a box over here for the side panel that grows. So let's start adding some containers. I'm gonna use the flex box for this, which is gonna be a horizontal layout. And then we're gonna add another container inside of it, which sticks perfectly to the sides. If that's not the case for you and you see some space on the inside of your container, then your padding is probably still on default. You need to turn that off or just constantly disconnect the padding, but it's easier to turn it off. Inside of the site settings, inside of layout, make sure these values are on 0. Then it looks the same as mine. Okay, so now we have one container. Let's make sure we see the layers panel. You can turn it on over here. We have one container, we need another one. I'm gonna press Command D in order to duplicate it. If that doesn't work on your keyboard, then just right click and duplicate. If you're on a Windows, it's Control D, by the way. So now we have 3 containers. The middle one, we want that to be the same as the main box. So our header over here is 1120 in width. So we still have some space on the left and on the right. So we're gonna make this middle container, we're gonna make that 1120. It's already on full width, that's fine. We're gonna put it on pixels and we're just gonna type in 1120, but nothing happens. And that is because the container by default grows and shrinks automatically. So we need to add something over here to say to Elementor that this box should just be 1120, no matter what the flex box wants. You do that by clicking on size and then none. Then it pushes the other 2 containers to the sides. Then it kind of shrinks the other 2 containers because now we're forcing it. On the background container, we also need to make sure that that one is on full width, because the green box goes all the way to the left over here, and on the right here there's also a white box which you don't see because there's nothing in it, but we need to go to the absolute edges, so that's why the background container needs to be on full width. Okay, now you see that our 2 outer containers still have a little bit of space which shrink, and our middle box, the 1121, it doesn't shrink, which is what we want. Okay, we also have some space here between the containers. I also don't like that because it needs to stick perfectly. By default, Elementor doesn't show any gap, but there is a gap. I know, a little bit annoying, but that's how it works. So you press 0, and now you can see that there is no gap between the containers. Now let's give it a little bit of height for our main container over here. It doesn't really matter for this website, but I'm gonna use percentages. So view height, I'm gonna put it on that. And I think I wanna use like 70, so that we still see a little bit of the next section over here. And now the basic structure is done. Let's start adding some elements. So the obvious thing you think that we need to do is go to style and then add a background image. And you can do that. I tried to make it work, but that gave problems on responsive. So I don't want to do that. We need to add another container inside of this one. So I'm going to go to the plus and I'm going to just click once on the container. Now it adds another container inside of that 1120 container. Let's name it by double clicking to make sure we know where we are. This is the left and this is the right one. Okay. And this is the container we're going to place the image in, because soon we will have to move this container to create this white space over here. So let's start by adding an image as a background in that container. Select. By default, it's not the full height, so go back to your 1120 container and put it on a row. Then it becomes the full height because it will try to grow everything in a horizontal direction. Okay, now go back to your image container and we're gonna make sure that our image is in the right position. The first thing you want to do is go to display size and put it on cover. And then you want to make sure that it is in the middle, center. So right now our image container, which I'm calling image, is right on top of the 1120 container. And in order to make that white space over here, we need to push it a little bit. So what I did is I went to advanced, I unlinked the margin, and I just played around with the left. So if you, for example, put it on 120, by the way, if you hold Control or Command, you can jump in steps of 10 pixels. Then you can push it a little bit from the left side, creating this gap. And now we're gonna add the green box over here and push that back. So let's do that. We're gonna add another container inside of this container, which we're gonna give a background color of that green. Okay, now we're gonna make sure that the green container is not so wide and it's gonna be in the middle. The width that I use for that container is actually on pixels, and then I think I use 350. Now you can see that I completely are messing it up. And that's because I'm in the wrong container. I don't know, I think I misclicked. So let's go a step back. I'm so sorry. I should click on this one, the green container, then go to layout, then go to full width, put it on pixels, and this one needs to be 350. Okay, it also needs to have some height, which I also use 350 for, and then I want to put it in the middle, but then you need to click on the one that's beneath it, which is very hard to do. So if you go to your image over here, then go to layout and then put justify content in the middle, then it will be in the middle. But now it's not aligned to the grid. So now we need to push this box to the left. And we can do that by doing the exact opposite as we did to the image. By going to advanced, unlink this, holding Command or Control, and then just pushing it 120 pixels to the left. So now it's perfectly aligned to the grid. So let's add some text to this container to make it come alive. There's no padding in here. We need a little bit of padding. So I'm just gonna add 40 pixels of padding here on the inside, but I don't want any padding on the left. So I'm gonna unlink it after I added the padding, and then I'm gonna delete the padding. So now we can add this green box over here. So how we're gonna do that is we're gonna add a container to this one. So if you go to the plus again and add a container inside of that one, also give it a green background color, the same one, and then put it in the middle. But again, you cannot click on it. You have to make sure you're on the left one, then justify content in the middle, then go back to your green container, then go to layout and give it that same height, so 350. Now you can see the trick. Let's see if it works. If I close this window, yes, it grows. So now it looks like this container and this container is connected. but it's not, but it doesn't matter because it works on the front end. Let's make a save draft and preview our web design on the front end to see if it works. Yes, it works. Of course, at some point it breaks because we haven't set up all of the other breakpoints, but it does work. And even on bigger screens, if you zoom out like ultra wide, it still is connected to the sides and to the logo at the top, but also the content here at the bottom. So yeah, it works. That is great. Now we can focus on some other cool details. For example, the image hover, this button over here, and then that this content box moves under our image. So let's focus on that. Let's first add the image effect. So make sure you're going to your image layer over there, go to style, and in image over here, there are mouse effects. I am not sure if this is also possible in the free version, because this may be a pro feature, but they have two effects over here, opposite and direct. So that means that when you move your mouse to the right, the image moves to the left, that is opposite. And direct is that it follows you. You can decrease the speed a little bit if you think that it's too much. Yeah, that looks a little bit nicer. Okay, now for this little guy, I just added a button basically. So I'm now adding a button inside of the image container, but it does move up my box because that's how the flex box work. So we need to make sure that this button will move over here in the corner somehow. I want to do that by going to advanced, then going to position and putting it on absolute. Now we can put it anywhere in the corner. So if you already want to start at a great point, you can already click over here to the right and then to the bottom, and it's already here almost where we want it, but the content is not great yet. So first I want to give it that green color. Then I want to go to content over here, and I don't need any text, but I do want a arrow, an icon. So you can go over here to icon library and then search for arrows. They already have some arrows over here, which are pretty nice, but of course you can also upload your own arrow. So now I have uploaded an arrow in here. That looks okay, but I need to add a lot more padding on the inside of that button. So I'm gonna unlink this, then it becomes really small, as you can see. So now we're just gonna add some padding. For this design, I am gonna use 30, and that makes it a lot bigger. Now we need to move it outside a little bit. So we're gonna do that by just increasing that absolute positioning, which we already set up. If you go to advanced, you can use this slider over here to just move it around. Here, I know I want to move it a little bit to the right, so I'm going to use minus 30 pixels over here. And for the vertical, I want to move it down, so that's also a negative number. So that is minus 30. And now that looks cool. Oh, it still has rounded corners, so I also want to turn that off, because in our design it does not have that. Perfect. And now I want to add the mouse over effect. You can easily do that by going to advanced, then transform, then hover, then offset, and then you can mess around with the X. Oh, sorry, I mean the I, because the X is the horizontal, the I is the vertical. So yeah, oh, that's way too much. Let's try 15. That is a lot nicer already. And you can also play around with the transition duration, because by default it's quite fast. So yeah, now it's a little bit softer. That looks kind of cool. Okay, let's test it quickly on the front end. Yeah, our image moves smoothly when we hover over it, and this button moves as well. Those are the little details that just make your design a lot cooler. So I always recommend to spend a little bit more time on stuff like that. And now the last thing is to move this box up so it moves under our image. We're also going to use the same trick as we did before with negative margin. So make sure you have the bottom container selected and then just move it up like this. For example, minus 50 pixels. But now you can see that it is on top, even though in our layer panel it looks like it is on the bottom. That is because this is not a design tool. Elementor is not a design tool. In Figma, in a tool like Figma, a layer above would mean that it's visibly above it, but not in development. So you need to tell Elementor that this container with the tree inside of it needs to be on top of that, and you do that by going to advanced, Z index, and just put it on 2. So this one is 1 or 0 and this one is 2. So now we're sure that it's always on top. But now I see that I have 1 or 2 pixels of spacing here, which I don't like. So I'm just going to change this to maybe 70 so that it's above it. That looks a little bit better. Now let's check our result and see how it looks. Yes, that looks great. Okay, now we need to do responsiveness. Yes, we're not done yet. Of course, I want to show you the responsiveness, and the way I set it up with the containers right here makes it quite easy to do responsiveness. So let's first go to the laptop responsive mode. By the way, if you don't see all of the responsive modes that I see, you need to go to site settings, then go to layout, then go to breakpoints over here, and you need to turn all of them on over here. You can add them by clicking over here, and then you have to save and go back so that you also have a lot of breakpoints. And let me tell you, especially with designs like this where you have a lot of containers moving around, you need these extra breakpoints because otherwise things are just gonna not look good on different devices. You don't want that. 3 that they give you by default is not enough for complex layouts. Maybe only for simple ones, but I still see many mistakes on people's Elementor's websites that only use 3 breakpoints. So yeah, it's a little bit more effort. You don't need to recreate the whole design. Sometimes it's just changing a few things, which we are also going to do right now. Yeah, so let's go to laptop. You can see that in my header, I've already played around with the width of the box container of that header. I put it on 80 over here. So I'm gonna make sure that I align it to the header because I also use those same values in the bottom container. So that's what I'm gonna try. So the first thing I'm gonna try is just select my container, then put it on percentages over here and also put it on 80. But that doesn't work because we need to make sure that this container always sticks to the side. So then let's try to do the middle container and put that on 80%. And that works kind of fine for now, I guess. But if you go to smaller devices, you probably want to make this gap a little bit smaller, right? So then you need to change the values. So if you go back to your image container, go over here. Now it's 1120. You have to unlink it again for some reason. Let's go to 100. But now this container is not aligned anymore to the logo. So then we also need to change that one over here, unlink it again, and also put this on minus 100. And then it's perfectly aligned again. See, now it looks good. We're just gonna go a step lower and see if it looks good. Yeah, I think this one looks still fine. To be honest, we don't need to change anything here. Okay, here maybe we want to go one step lower. So again, instead of 100 here, let's go for 80. And then also for this container, from minus 100, we're going to put it on minus 80. And there you go. You see how easy it is with these containers to do that? But now I see that this one is not aligned yet. And that is because the 1120 container also needs to be adjusted to the width of the header. Because on this breakpoint on tablet, I want to make it more than 80. I often use 85. So make sure that this one is then also an 85. And then it should be perfectly aligned. Okay, there you can see it. We're jumping from 80 to 85. And now everything still looks good. Okay, quickly check mobile landscape. That also looks good. But now for mobile. This is where the design breaks a little bit. And you have to basically accept that it's not going to be as pretty as on desktop. Not all of the cool designs work on a mobile. So let's fix it. And now I really need the layers panel again. So for this left panel, I just want to disable it because we simply don't have the space for it. But if you just simply go to advanced, then go to responsive and turn it off here, then it's still so big in your preview. So what I would do in this situation, I would just delete the minimum height. So inside of this inner container, the green one, there's still 350 from the desktop. So I would just put that on 0. So it's out of my sight basically, and then I would turn it off just so that it's easier to work with. So now turning it off. So when I close this panel, yeah, this is how it looks. I could of course also try to put it in front of here, but that's really hard because what we can now do is just go to our green container over here. Why did I not call that green container? That's a lot easier. And for the other one as well. Okay, for this green container, I can just now add a little bit of padding. I'm gonna put 40 on all sides. That's a little bit easier, right? Maybe make this whole box a little bit bigger. Right now the width is still on pixels. Let's also delete the right container. That one is over here. I'm also going to make sure that the minimum height is on 0 so we don't really see it before we turn it off. So now I'm going to go to responsive mode and then turn it off as well. Okay, in this preview, I don't know if we really see what's going on. So let's close it and see how close we are to something that looks okay. It's not that bad, to be honest, already. Let's first fix that button. I'm going to just move it a little bit to the left by the X. Now it's on -30. So let's try to put it on 20. Okay, that works, but I work with percentages for the main container. So what I mean is that for my main containers over here, so this one, I work on 90% width for the box container so that we have 5% padding on the left and 5% on the right. And I want to achieve that here as well. It's a bit hard, but let's try. So for this button, what you should actually do then is just add 5 pixels, or sorry, 5% of padding here on the left. Let's see if that works. So I'm just going to put it on 5 and yes, it works. That is great. Maybe we can put it down a little bit more like this, but here is really tricky to see what's going on because in the preview it looks different than on the final. So yeah, this part is very tricky. I'm going to do my best. First, for the background image, it's now pushed 80 pixels to the right, but that's a little bit too much. So I'm going to unlink it and I'm just going to put it on 40. Let's see. Okay, that looks fine. Now for our inner container, I want to have this 5% here on the left, but that's really hard here because we already used pixels. This is also the part that I have not perfectly prepared, so I hope that you bear with me. Okay, 5% of padding here. It still doesn't look good, but that is because this margin is also still here, so I need to unlink it. Remember, this image was pushed 40 pixels to the right because we have 40 pixels of space on the left, so we're going to push this one to the left by 40 pixels, and then the spacing or the padding on the inside of this green box, we're going to use percentages to make sure it's aligned to the logo. Are you still following me? I hope you are. It's not super easy. Let's first change the minimum height of this box as well, or let's just delete it actually, because we don't need that much space. I'm just going to play around with percentages here. It's a little bit of hacking. So let's try to unlink this, and then for example for the bottom 10% and for the top 10%. Yeah, that looks kind of okay. Let's close this panel to see. What do you think, guys? I want to make this image a little bit higher to make sure we see a little bit more of the image. I'm just going to add some padding on the top and on the bottom. So for example 20, and now let's close the panel and see. Yeah. Okay, now I see one more thing that I want to change. Remember that I said that we can use percentages here to make sure this button aligns to the icon, but now that I close it, I'm like, maybe I just want to align this button to this box over here. So you can also do that. Instead of using percentages over here, we can just put in that same 40 pixels because that should work. Oh, the other way around, 40. And now, yeah, that looks a little bit better. I think this design is good enough for this tutorial. We can always perfect it, but I think it's pretty cool. Let's test it so we can see our final result. Refresh, and we're gonna go down all the way to mobile. That looks good. That looks good. Now it switches to the hamburger icon. And now that also looks good on smaller devices. Okay, maybe this space is a little bit too much, but I can easily decrease that. The next section also moves beautifully under it, does not create any big problems. So yeah, this was quite challenging, as you can see, especially the mobile responsiveness. Sometimes I'm also just playing around, trying different things until it looks good. It's also still aligned to the grid, because that's always really important. You don't want a messy layout where everything has different values. So yeah, I wanted to show you my struggle as well. I hope you can appreciate it. The container gives us so much possibilities, but with that freedom also comes responsibility. Now, if you are excited to learn more about Elementor and more in depth, then you might want to check out my Elementor Pro course. Many people like it. It has improved their workflow. This is not just a course where I show you everything that's possible. No, in this course, I teach you how to improve your workflow so that you can deliver your websites faster and therefore make more money, but also remove the chaos and the overwhelm that many people feel when working with Elementor. So I will also put a link to this in the description. Maybe it's something for you, who knows? Okay, I hope that you liked this video, and if you want to see more, then check out my channel. Okay guys, see you in the next one.